it's Vanessa here. Looking forward to showing you some oil pastel techniques today. So let's move in and get started. Alright, so what I've got here is my first sheet, and I've just started by masking it up. That's just going to help me frame the sections that I want to trial my techniques in. And it looks really lovely at the end when you can pull that away and have a nice clean white space around it. So I'm basically just going to get this long rectangle and break it up into cubes, really. Also gives me a small space to work in so that I can focus what I'm doing in one small area rather than trying to, trial a new technique in a really large area. Just do things nice, quick and easy, and see the best way that I like to do things. Really, when you're working with art materials, you've got to decide as the artist what works best for you. Now I'm going to show you a couple of things today, and I'll explain along the way which ones I prefer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to prefer. So it's really all about giving things a go, developing your own style, and making your own choices. Having a bit of fun along the way too, of course. Alright, here we go. So I've got 8 boxes, and I'm going to start with the oil pastels that give me a range of the primary colours, the secondary colours. What I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a red, an orange and a yellow, and I'm just going to talk you through blending. So all of these boxes here, I'm going to show you some different blending techniques. And a few special effects as well along the bottom row. So we're going to start up here with the darker red. Now, as you can see from the colour that's working into the page here, we've got a little bit of blue. Sometimes on our pastels, as we work through things, we pick up other colours. I actually really enjoy that because it gives you a little bit of a surprise, but it also blends nice little deeper tone up there. I'm going to work my yellow down the bottom. As you can see, I'm going to be working dark to light or light to dark, depending which direction. And the idea here with blending is you definitely want to overlap. So I'm overlapping my orange into my red. I'm using quite a hard pressure as well. When you're blending, you really need to think about the pressure that you're using. You could do this exact same technique, but you could do it with lighter pressure. And what we want to avoid is creating stripes of colour. So you can see here I'm working back up into the red and then back down into the orange. It's layering the colour. Okay, but I've got a real stripe here. So I'm actually going to grab the yellow again, and I'm going to work back up into the orange a little bit. Basically feathers where it joins, makes it a little more seamless. Now, as you can see with oil pastels, you build up a bit of residue, but that's totally normal. What I'm going to do is grab some tissue, and I'm going to show you how I can tissue blend this. So when we're blending, we're going to try tissue blending. We're going to try finger blending in this box here. Then we're going to move on to something called stipple, and over here, something called scrumbling. So quite a few different techniques. Now with tissue blending, it can be any tissue really. I've just got some kitchen paper towel, which you'll find in your cupboard at home. And I'm basically rubbing up and down the colour. And that way, I guess I'm not making my hands too dirty, and I'm letting the tissue do the work for me. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm not necessarily going to show you all my favourite techniques only. I'm going to show you other techniques as well. This is probably not one of my favourites, and it's because you pick up a lot of the oil pastel and you're taking it away from the work, but it does have its time and place. Okay, so as you can see, I've kind of got a bit of a sunset technique. Just blow the residue off, give it a little white. But you can see that I've taken away some of that richness. It's not quite as vibrant as it was beforehand, but it's still definitely effective. So that's technique number 1, so we'll call that tissue blending. I'm going to go for some blues now and a bit of violet. Let's use the range of colours that we've got in our kit. I'm going to start up the top with the purple. So when I was talking about pressure earlier, guys, here's like a soft pressure. You can see with a soft pressure, you still see the texture of the paper, and you'll see a bit of white coming through as well. So depending on the artwork that you're doing, you're going to decide what works for you and what you really need at that point. So I'm going to show you the difference in the colour range. Go down the bottom again. We've got the light blue. I'm going to work through to the vibrant, bright side of these cooler colours. Obviously we just worked with warm colours, the red, the orange and the yellow. And here we've got our cooler colours. So I'm going to overlap them a little bit. And I'm not going to use as hard a pressure, just so I can show you the difference. Just overlap that seam a little bit. But really what I'm going to do here, guys, is my finger is going to do the blending. So this is where you do definitely get a bit grubbier for your art, but that's all good too. So you can see as I'm blending, it's a beautiful wash technique through there where they start merging. I'm going to move that up into the purple or the violet. You get a bit of movement in the oil pastel that's building up on the page, which can actually have a great texture and a great effect in your work as well. I'd probably work that a little bit more just so I don't get too much of a striping effect. So that's a medium pressure again. I'll grab some light blue, overlap. Okay, and just blend those in again. Now the good thing about using your finger if you're going to blend, particularly if you're doing curves, say you're doing waves or you're doing a face, you can really move your finger in the direction that you're wanting to create that texture and that blend of colour. So there we go. We've got tissue blending and finger blending. Now we're going to move on to some greens, guys. We're going to do what's called stippling. Now, this is one for the patient artist who can spend a little bit of time trying to create the effect that they really want. This can be really good for things like grasses, landscapes, water effects. So you're looking at impressionism and you're doing some pointillist work. If you picture, say, Claude Monet's beautiful pond, water studies, water lilies, leaves, landscapes. This can also be really, really effective for backgrounds where you don't need a lot of detail in figures, forms, buildings, trees, but you want to create a bit of, you know, out of focus texture. So what we do here, as you can see, I started with a darker green, I've moved on to the lighter green. Now basically I want to blend this colour back up into the darker green. That's where I'm going to get certain points of my page merged together and they create like a medium green really, but I can come back with my darker green, and the concentration of dots is what's going to give me the boldness, the vibrancy of one colour over another, and then I can blend back down. And I can actually space out the stippling, and you can see overall the effect is this area is much lighter. Okay, so this beautiful lime green is going back up to the top. Keep stippling. And even though we're working with greens here, guys, you can actually bring in something like a yellow. Okay, so I'm going to bring in a yellow now. Now, as I mentioned before, we get a bit of residue from other colours. You can just have a scrap bit of paper to work that off, or you can wipe it on some tissue paper. So here we go, nice clean yellow, and I'm going to stipple that in and then work it back up. So I've graduated my colour. Now you can imagine with the sun or anything really, you can radiate this colour blend out in all directions. It would look really beautiful with a concentrated colour in a circle and then working your way out. So you definitely don't have to work in squares, but it's just nice and quick and easy for us to try a few things today. And bring a little bit of that green, just little touches of it down into the yellow. So again, you're not creating a striped effect. So there we go, that's called stippling. And the next one, which is probably the loosest, can't really make any mistakes with this. You're just really scribbling around. It's called scrumbling. So I'm going to start with a brown, and you just really no exact rhyme or reason. You're just layering in different directions, whatever suits your purpose, and you're layering over the top of each colour. Obviously blending is all about bringing 2 colours, 3 colours, 4 colours together and making new colours and creating your own special techniques to really enhance what you're trying to achieve in your work. I'm going to layer back in. You can always rework with pastel. That's the really beautiful thing about oil pastels. You can rework over the top. You know, I'm feeling like this is a little dark, so I can move in with a brighter colour, add a bit more pressure. Now this is the beautiful thing about blending pastels. I'm not using tissue, I'm not using my finger this time. The oil pastel actually does the work for me. And guys, this is really my preferred way to do it. I really want to use the pastel. I'm not taking away from the page. I'm building up, building up, building up. And just like paint, but without the water and without, you know, some of that mess, you can start something, come back to it later and keep working. You don't have to worry about drying time. And the pastels will move themselves around the page, which is really lovely. So I've used a real circular technique here. You could do the same thing, but get a bit more diagonal, shorter in your stroke, and see how you go. So there we go, there's the top 4 techniques. So just to revise, we've got tissue blending. We did some finger blending here. This one's called Stippling, and that's Scrumbling. Hope you like those 4, guys, and have a lot of fun trying those out for yourself. Now we're going to do a little bit of scratch art. Now this is really fun too, and you can take this in many, many different directions. Down here, what I'm going to do is layer up some colours. So I'm thinking a little bit of a sea theme. I'm going to go with some green, might build in a bit of blue, light blue and dark blue. So basically what we're doing here is we're creating the first layer that's underneath. So I can even use my pastels to blend that. Get a new colour here together with the blue and the green, which is beautiful. Okay, so now that I've filled that square, I'm happy with that. I'm going to layer over the top now, and I'm going to use a purple. So I'm just going to use something that's different to what I created underneath. Effectively covering those colours. You can see a little hint of them coming through, but I've created a second layer. Okay, sliding over the top. There we go. Now this is where you can grab anything that you might have. I've got a burnisher here, which is lovely. It's got a really fine tip and then a medium tip. But you could also grab something you might have around the house, like a skewer stick. A paddle pop stick can be good for variation as well. So we might try a few things with those. So I'm just going to go with a really basic kind of form. Thinking about a mermaid here, so I'm just doing the mermaid's hips, and you can see the different colours coming through. Show you the difference with a skewer. Okay, so really what you're doing is you're drawing on top, but effectively you're scratching the top layer of oil pastel away. And you can get a really lovely effect here with scales, and just try different things, and I'm getting that kind of rainbow iridescent effect of different colours shining through. Okay, there we go. So that's the first one. And the second one that we're going to do, another blend. Let's grab some warm tones this time. Like radiate out. I'm going to use the pastels to do all the blending this time. And you can see already I'm getting that warm tangerine burnt orange coming through from just the yellow and the orange together. Get some red in there. Now this scratch art can really be just a really fine detail you might want to add to something. You might be working on a face or a figure. You might like to add in highlights. Okay, there we go. So again, just scratching in. And I haven't layered over the top, so you can see I'm not scratching through a layer, but I am creating another texture and a different technique, just to emphasize the shape that I'm working on. That'd be lovely with shells, anything at all really. Okay, next one. We're gonna work on, we might move on to Sgraffito. So Sgraffito is really just using one colour. Let's go with something we haven't used too much of. We'll go, might try this beautiful pink. So just the one colour. I'm just giving it a really good coverage. And you're scratching straight through to the paper. Okay, so that's got a really lovely quality depending on what paper. You could also do this on black paper. You could do it on different coloured papers. And that again would add another dimension without you having to layer colour in. I think that's one of my favourites actually. Alright, so we're going to come back to this last box. We're going to go with one layer underneath. I'm using a really light pressure. I think it'd be nice to vary what we're doing. Let's get a bit of green in there. Might add a bit of blue, which will actually make a darker green for us because we're blending, of course, putting two colours together. So you can see I've come back with the yellow over the top. It creates a really dark sea green, a kind of teal, depending on the pressure and how much you've used. If I bring a light blue on this end where we've got the yellow and the lime green, it's definitely going to be a bit brighter. Okay, now what we haven't done yet, which I'm excited to try, is the black over the top. Okay, so first of all I'm just going to go in the other direction just to get good coverage, and I'll come back, slide over the top so I'm getting a nice solid black. Okay, you might remember things like this scratch art you've done in activity books and, you know, little art kits that you can buy, but this is one you can create for yourself. And that means you can do any colour you want underneath. The size, there's no limit. And you could trial it with lots of different types of paper too, which is a lot of fun. Okay, so I'm going to go with a little bit of an owl, I think, this time. So, of course, with the owl, the eyes are the main feature. Okay. And really, as you can see, that eye has got a tiny bit bigger than the other one, but that's easy to fix. So you can just rework the lids there, bring it down, and of course once you keep adding detail, that's going to add more layers to what you're doing. So we think about the owl's feathers, little nostrils there. Okay, and again I said we could use a skewer stick. You could even trial things like just holding it and rubbing there. You don't always have to draw it, right? So you can press things in, which is a lovely way to experiment with anything you find around the house. Go rummage through the garage. I'm sure you'll find lots of great things that would create textures and patterns for you. We'll use the other end of the skewer stick now. Just put that pointed end in. Okay. And of course we've got the wings, which we can refer to that way. Change the direction of the feathers. Okay. We've got that lovely blue, the deeper sea green coming through. Beautiful. Might just use the paddle pop stick. Get a little bit of soft texture without pressing in too hard. And there we have it, our little owl. Alright, so what we've got here today, guys, and I hope you've really enjoyed it, we've got some tissue blending, we've got the finger blending with the cooler colours, we've got stippling, which was the repeated dots, which was really fun to do, and the sky's the limit with that one. The scrumbling, which is really nice and loose, you don't need too much control for that. Then down the bottom here we've got the 3 different scratch arts. I tried 3 just so you could see a different blend of colours underneath. And over here the sgraffito, where you just use the one colour and then you scratch into that. So let's have a little reveal now and take our masking tape off. And if it hasn't stuck too hard down to the paper, you get these really beautiful, crisp, clean borders. As you know, working with oil pastels, the framing around your work can get quite grubby. So it's a lovely idea, if you can, to mask up. You could even try using the blue painter's tape, because that may not stick to the paper as much. But for today, experimenting, it's created the desired effect, I think. We've had a good go at this and we've got some beautiful, clean white borders. Just really presents that mini artwork quite nicely. And it's nice to look back on to remind yourself about the different techniques that you do know, that you have tried, and that you can use in a larger project. So that beautiful crisp edge. And then even if you wanted to crop your paper later and cut off certain sections, you've got a lovely card there that you could keep at your desk or in your studio in an art folder and refer back to. Sometimes it's nice to remind ourselves of all the things that we can use. Just helps you problem solve when you're creating a new artwork and gives you fresh ideas again. There we go. Beautiful. Okay guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've really enjoyed it. We've created some really good stuff today. Have fun with it. Remember, you can always contact the team at Charlie Boots. They would love to hear from you, and we'll see you for the next one.